Okay. Are there other tips kaya?
There's also another important skill that is often taken for granted by debaters, because the impression is that when you debate, you have to talk fast and then you have to uh, get your point across right away. But there is the second part, which is the listening part, which is I think is just as important as speaking, because you have to listen to the opposing side's arguments and you have to be able to counter them. Now, if your mind is fully closed on just delivering your arguments and not paying attention to what they're saying, there isn't going to be an effective clash. There isn't going to be an opportunity for you to show to the judges or to show to the audience that their point is wrong. Again, earlier I said you have to be direct and specific when countering the arguments. You can't do that if your mind is fully closed on just delivering your own arguments. You have to listen to the other side and then try to, in the little time that you have, dissect it and then weaken their arguments and infuse your points that support your case. So if you do not listen, you won't be able to directly counteract or refute their statements. It's very important to put that in mind. When your speech is over and their turn comes, try to take down notes. Get the points written down. My advice is to have different sets of index cards, different colors. So if you want to rebut argument one, you put it on a yellow index card, blue for point number two, and green for point number three, so on and so forth. So you can organize it that way, but pay particular attention to what they're saying. Write it down so that when you ask a POI or when you prepare for a rebuttal, everything is discussed. You don't miss out on the points because you're too focused on your own arguments.
And
Yeah.
also, what if the POI question is too long? Is it okay
Mm.
for you to cut the opponent's questioning?
Yeah, generally the POI is just 15 seconds long. If they do that, they it's a point taken against the one raising the POI. But as a speaker, it's actually your time that they're taking away from you. You can cut off the speaker respectfully by saying, what is the point of information? Because he or she might already be discussing his or her arguments and using your time. So you have to take control of the 7 minutes that you have. And once you entertain a POI, make sure that it's direct to the point and then answer it right away, because this is not his or her time to speak. It's your time to speak, and don't let her invade that, him or her invade that.
All right, so how about in terms of delivery? What are the tips that you have for my students?
Thank you, Zerah. That's actually the next part. Here, for the delivery tips, let's start with this one. First, it's important that you master your material. I'm going to go back again to the point that no matter how good you speak, if you don't know your material, you will be revealed as having a shallow presence on the debate stage. So what I mean by master your material is to really go over it several times over. The prepare part of this presentation is actually an anchor, because you have to go back to preparation, form your arguments, test your arguments, rehash your arguments, and then complete your final draft. And even your final draft is not a final draft, because when you get to the debate stage, it's going to be more extemporaneous, guided, but more extemporaneous. So I would also suggest, and I would insert here, that when you deliver your speech, you don't read your speech. Um, it will boost the judge's confidence in you that you know your material well, because you're not reading from a script. You can look at your index card and there will be points there. You will know that you've mastered your material at a point when you look at your index card and there's just one phrase there, and then you can expound it without looking at your notes anymore. So if on your first point you say there is no command responsibility, in your mind you will already know, okay, my next step is to define what command responsibility is, and then my second step is to demonstrate it was just a form of cooperation, and then I will cite this case, then I will cite an example, and that is my train of thoughts. Without looking at your index card, you know what you're doing because you've mastered your material. As a tip, what I do when I prepare for constructive speeches is I always go into the mindset that I am telling somebody a story,
Mm.
because I myself would be following this train of thought. You know how a story goes. There's a beginning. There's a arising problem, and then there's the conflict resolution. The parts of a story. So you put yourself, or you put your case in that context, and it will be easier to memorize your speech. And again, it's not even as much as memorizing, but since you already believe in your case, and you've already mastered the materials, you're familiar with the legal basis, you're familiar with the cases, it's just actually going to become sort of a storytelling. And if memory serves me right, when we were kids, that the stories that our grandparents tell us stick to our minds because they were able to imprint a good image. That is also your objective. When you deliver, do not read your material. Once you've mastered it, you're able to actually tell a story. And the clearer, the more compelling the story is, the better the chances that you'll be able to get your message across and win the debate. So that's mastery of your material. The fact that you're able to tell it as a story and convince other people, then you know you've mastered it.
What if after researching you are not that convicted of your own side? Can you still deliver well?
Thanks, Sarah. Now, there will be chances when, there will be times rather when you are not fully confident of your argument, because you've done opposition research and you know that there's also weakness in your case. But the thing that we do during the debate rounds is we become objective with the case that we have, and we present it as clearly as possible with the facts that we're given. Now, it's just like, a simple example: the debate on whether schools should require students to wear a uniform. Uh, there's an argument that it will be less expensive for the students because they will no longer need to buy different sets of clothes for just to attend classes. But there's also an argument that says it impinges on their freedoms, or on their creativity. So there both may be valid, but you have to stick to your argument and say na, yes, it impinges on their creativity, but you have to weigh uh, which one at this point in time takes more value. Is it economical reason, or is it creativity? In this case, we can bring the argument to economic reasons, and stick to that. I guess for instances where the problem is a gray area, they can be argued for or against. You just have to look at the arguments, the strongest arguments that you have, and defend it as best as you can. Being mindful of what they're going to say, but also being prepared to have a counter statement for that.
All right. That's
Mhm.
a good tip, Kuya.
Yes, thanks. And then a few more there. You have to, when you're already presenting, you have to exude calm and confidence. Now, it shows when you're not confident with your arguments, because there's lack of eye contact. Your speech becomes faster, your delivery becomes faster, and then you try not to address questions anymore. You're just trying to finish the 7 minute limit, and then breathe a sigh of relief once your 7 minutes is over. But when you get to the stage, uh, easier said than done. But the point to do here is to really remain uh, constant with your objective, which is to carry a message across. It may not be a message that everybody agrees with, but it's a message that you want to get across. So on the platform, you believe, before you try to speak, you inhale deeply, and then you believe that you done all the preparations that you could to win this debate, and then run the argument. You've done the rehearsals, you've done the mock debates. All you can do now is to present it as clearly as possible. And when you step onto that stage, that is the only thing that you should be thinking of. How do I get this message across? You're not thinking about what the judges will say. You're not going to think about if you're going to win or lose. You're going to stand up there and deliver the message that you came to say. So your manner of being calm and confident, it's manifested in your body language as well. One tip, if whenever we fear a particular school, or we're not confident with how things are going, we hold on to the rostrum to keep our hands from shaking. So it's
Oh.
or whenever you see that we're holding already the rostrum, it's to keep us more stable, so to speak. Pero ang tuhod, kapangurog naman din sa ceiling. It can't be seen. But yeah. Then okay. Speak clearly and concisely. Common error of debaters is to usually be very fast, bullet fast, lightning fast. Tapos, the message is not clearly received by the judges, by the audience, and by the opposing side, which results to a muddled interpellation. There's no clear point of information. It's a waste of time. So, if you're able to say in 5 sentences your main points, um, with examples, very clear examples that drive the point home, that will be better than spending the rest of the 5 minutes uh, pointing out the same case or the same argument over and over again, where the audience will no longer be listening to you. They'll be zoning out because they really don't understand what you're saying. So speak clearly and speak concisely. And then there's also one that I'd like to highlight. It's speak deliberately. What I mean by speak deliberately is you need to take pauses. You need to emphasize on particular points. You can just say, you can drone on and say he is not guilty of war crimes because there is no criminal responsibility because he was only following, they were only cooperating. You can't drone out like that. You can say, you can emphasize on the point that our argument is there is no command responsibility precisely because there was only cooperation on the part of the rebels. Now, here is what happened. The soldiers went to the barangay, and then they attacked the barangay, and they were only doing it because they have the same mission objective as the military. They were not following orders from the general. So if you're able to speak slowly, paint the picture clearly, emphasize on the words that need to be stressed, then the message that you're delivering to the audience and to the judges is absorbed rather well than blasting through your 7 point argument where nobody understood what you said. So by speaking deliberately, you also have to choose your words carefully. So when you say command responsibility, cooperation, uh, effective control, you have to slow down and you have to emphasize that, you have to stress that. If you need examples, then you paint the examples clearly, so they can picture it in their minds as well. Body language is also important. Use your hands to communicate. Many times, it becomes already an oratorical contest where the speakers
Hmm.
gesticulate every so wildly, emphasizing with their hands every single word na lang. But when you use your body language wisely, you can stress on a point with your finger, or enumerate things uh, at specific stages of your speech. When you say there, it does not exist, you emphasize a point, or you say it is imperative for this court to judge in favor of the accused, so on and so forth. When you say is there really command responsibility when there is no superior subordinate relationship? Your facial expression also matters. You can't say na it does not exist. But when you emphasize that it does not exist, then it conveys the message na, oh, yeah, it's clear. I can see from his expression, I can see from his statements also that command responsibility does not exist. So it's not only by words, it's not only by cases and points, but it's also the body language that you show to the judges, which builds confidence. It invites them to trust your arguments more than the other team. So use wisely your hands, use wisely your tone, and then use wisely your facial expression also when delivering your points. And the last one is being charismatic and relatable. Um, in the Hong Kong rounds of the moot competition that Zerah and I joined in, we were able to see some teams from different countries which are who are very expressive to the point of being very angry. And when they made their point, they were almost shouting that no, there is no criminal responsibility, and therefore he should not be held liable. But this did not have the impact that they so desired, because in their antagonistic demeanor, the judges didn't so much appreciate their arguments anymore. Uh, Without tooting our own horns, the Philippine team, which we represented, we were highlighted or appreciated by the judges because we were very diplomatic in the way that we delivered our arguments, even if the questions were really tough. We still managed to answer them with respect. We say, Your Honor, we understand the point that you're trying to raise. However, this does not agree with the latest interpretation of international humanitarian law. So the way that we said it, it was respectful, it was charismatic, it wasn't antagonistic, and more importantly, when we told the story of how we interpreted the things from the general's perspective, they we sort of humanized uh, the events such that the judges were able to relate to what was happening and to empathize with our case. So that last word there, relatable, is something that I would like to also to impress on the students who will be debating. When you tell, that's why I like to emphasize on really telling a story when you debate. It's because it's a combination of these three factors. There's the narrative, you tell the story, and then there's the visualization. This is where you're able to impress on your audience the narrative that you're trying to say. It's so I can tell a story, but if I'm a boring storyteller, you will forget what I said in a few minutes. But if it's something that I can tell interestingly and it sticks to your mind, and then I can support it with science, or in this case with case law, and then cases to support that with statistics, then all the more will my story be believable. All the more will I be able to convince the judges that our side has merit, or our arguments have merit over the opposing counsels. There's also another option that you can take, which is to appeal to the ethical, logical, and emotional angles of your storytelling. Um, when you make a case, when you bring out an argument, you can appeal to the ethical side of it. Why is it the moral choice? Why is it the general should be held liable for moral or ethical reasons? Logically speaking, you can also argue that there is command responsibility. There was effective control. Technically, the general was ordering the rebels to attack that village. It is supported by testimony. It's supported by photos, videos. So logically speaking, we make sense, and it's just but right that we convict the general. And then on an emotional appeal, you can also say that should the judge should the judge lean in favor of not convicting the general, it will do an injustice to the community. So You can
Mhm.
appeal to these three pillars when you deliver your story to your audience.
But you cannot just argue based on emotions. That could be
Yes,
a fallacy.
yes, that's right. So it's not something that you can just take advantage of or exploit oversimplification, or you romanticize the events to highlight a point, but the truth is already it's blurred by romanticization of particular facts or events.